This is the second part of a series that I called The Church Perverted. I started it yesterday and I talked about not giving or charity, which is the subject now, but justice. So I want to finish that up. I should say that the idea behind the church perverted is not, I'm not addressing the question of priests who seduce choir boys or something like that. For some of you younger kids who have been failed by the school system, words, it's always dangerous to release words in this atmosphere that we have today because they just kind of seem to bounce off these one-track minds that are around us in the public sphere like a pinball going down to the bottom of the machine, and you don't know where they're going to end up. To pervert something literally in the Latin sense means to turn it aside. So I'm arguing that the church, certainly many denominations have been turned aside from their original target. They're not really Christ-centered anymore. They're what I called yesterday Secular-Utopian. They're trying to construct the perfect society, and they sincerely believe, or their ambassadors and their advocates and the ministers, they seem to believe that the ultimate mission of the Gospels is actually to serve as a social blueprint. We're going to create this wonderfully functioning, progressive, smoothly humming social machine. There's no poverty to speak of. No one's going hungry. No one's miserably sick. And I'm going to turn today to the part of this that actually is most compelling to most of us, the giving part. If we think of nothing else about church, we think of it as maybe a beneficial institution because it gives to people in need. You know what? The first thought that I had about this is that actually that's such a general human impulse that we don't even need Christianity or a church to call that forth from us. Some of the most fraternal, sharing communities that have ever existed, and as far as we know, and as long as human beings have been on earth, have been these little hunter-gatherer communities. If you ever saw the old film The Gods Must Be Crazy about the little bushman, or you can think of something maybe a little more complex but still tribal. In tribal societies, people share everything. They're very conscious of their blood kinship. Now, they don't extend their humanity much beyond the bounds of their tribe, but within the tribe, what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours. It's all just one big family. And, genetically, it is literally one big family. So it's share and share alike. We don't need a gospel to make us want to give things to other people, or at least, even if we're kind of, we'd like to be more giving, but something is holding us back, we still admire other people who can do that. That's a very basic human response to behavior. We feel a kind of natural duty to, if someone doesn't have enough food, most of us will dig down and find something for the person. If somebody's wandering around without, look at Homer's Odyssey, and you can tell that in that culture there is very deeply rooted a sense of obligation to the deracinated wanderer, which is the part that Odysseus plays throughout most of the epic. He's a beggar at one point. He's a castaway. He's a man without a past. He even disguises his name. Nobody knows exactly who he is most of the time, but he's a person in need. And you can tell that in this culture, that's recognized as somebody you should do something for. So this is such a basic human drive that, sorry, churches, but we don't need you for that. And yet, this is the message that's coming out of so many of these social utopian, these secular utopian churches. They've taken God, they've taken the spirit out of the equation, and they seem to want to fuse with our welfare state to produce the one big happy family in our complex industrial society. In fact, they seem to want to spread it and make it global, which of course is something that a Homeric society couldn't have done. So we're going to take it out of the narrow parameters of tribalism, and we're going to make the whole globe just one big village. That's the mission. Where's God in that? Where's the Spirit? Let me put it to you this way. I, in my mid-20s, was, I've always been kind of a weirdo. I've never really fit into any group that I could find. And when I was a young man, with a degree, a couple of degrees actually, in Latin, and looking for jobs, well, as you can imagine that in the 70s and 80s, there just weren't a whole lot of jobs in the want-ads for somebody to come teach Latin to the employees of a nice, profitable company. So I ended up trying to teach kids a dead language in various rather snotty, rich, well-heeled private schools. And I knew that wasn't my mission in life. So I tried to emigrate to Ireland. I mean, how left-wing does all of this sound? If you think I'm someone who doesn't understand what it is to think outside the box, I went about as far outside the box as you can get. I tried to emigrate to Wexford, Ireland. This is one of the photos that I took. Beautiful little town. I'm sure it doesn't look a bit like this today. But you got to remember, this is 30-something years ago, probably more than that, more than I care to say. This always gets a laugh. I don't know if you can read that, but the sign there above that business says Bar and Undertaker. It's kind of, you could say, playing both sides of the street there. It's so, only in Ireland could you put a sign up like that and not expect anyone to walk by and chuckle. It's just that's just how life is. And there's the, I guess you could say, the Undertaker side of the equation. Although this is really a beautiful, actually there was a graveyard there, but it's very, very ancient. It's a beautiful ruined monastery, St. Selskir's Abbey. I used to love to take my walks in that direction. It really helped my meditation as I was trying to find answers about who I was and where I was going. But the Abbey, as they called it, was quickly turning into a car park. And that took me right back to Dallas in North Texas, the place where I was from. That was part of what I was trying to escape. Car culture everywhere, rush, 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 build, build, build. I couldn't find my place in that society, and I was looking for some place in the world where I felt that I could find my mission in life, my purpose in life. And things really didn't go too well in the second half of my 6-month effort to emigrate. I lived for 3 months on a meal a day, and it wasn't a very good meal. I lost 1/3 of my body weight, and I was at 118 pounds when I finally got home. But I'll tell you this, what I was really missing when I returned was not food in my belly, and it wasn't health either, although I got very sick and probably almost died of influenza because my immune system was so reduced. But what I missed most of all, and what I remember from that return, is feeling suicidal because I had not found the answer. I hadn't found what I was looking for. You need more than food. I mean, it's a cliche, isn't it? Man does not live by bread alone. But isn't it true? I mean, isn't a Christian supposed to know that that's true? You don't just give people stuff and expect them to find what it is that they're looking for. And you don't even, with apologies to George Bernard Shaw, the great socialist of the early 20th century, no, you don't actually have to feed people to make their soul come alive. A lot of times we find in really strained societies where people are getting shot for their Christian faith that they find food and comfort and shelter less important to them than things of the Spirit. Why is it that our churches can't recognize that? And people are going to see this and they're going to say, well, sure, you want to just invent some kind of rationalization so that you don't have to open up your pocketbook and give. That's just complacency. No, this is not an either or kind of equation. By all means, we do. I began this by saying it's just a natural human duty to give to people who are in need. But what I'm trying to say is that of all places, a Christian church should recognize that giving is very, very personal and can be very, very spiritual. When you give to somebody, you ought to know who that person is. You ought to know the person's name. You ought to know the person's circumstances and what that person really needs. What if there's, say, a single mom living next door to you who has 3 kids, and dad's just not in the picture at all, even every other weekend? He's just not there, deadbeat. So maybe you, with your 2 kids, when you take them to the ballpark and throw batting practice to them, why don't you ask these 3 kids over here if they want to come? Or if you and your wife and your kids go biking, maybe they can come with you. If they don't have bikes, maybe you can find the funds to buy bicycles for them. That's not necessarily buying food for starving people in Malaysia or for flood victims and tsunami victims in Sumatra or something. But a lot of times when we give to those ostensibly worthy causes, we're enriching all kinds of people along the way who are taking their nice fat cut out of our $1,000 check, and we don't care about thinking about that too much because our intentions were good. It's $1,000, $1,000. That's a lot out of my bank account. I had good intentions. It's not on me that the money's not actually getting where it's supposed to get. We could even, in some third world countries, we could be financing murderous dictators when we do that, or these piratical black market types who take our gift and then, they sell the canned beans or whatever it is at a really jacked up price, or they do something awful with our donations, which actually embeds and secures their power over their brutalized people. And we're funding that, but we're going to bed feeling righteous because we wrote that check. We're not really worried about it because our intentions were good. Sorry, I don't think that cuts it. I don't think that's what true giving is about. I think true giving is about your neighbor. I mean, your literal neighbor. It's people that you know. What about somebody that you're working with who's just really, really down? And so you say, what's the matter? You don't seem very perky today. Oh, it's okay. I can deal with it. Well, no, I'd like you to tell me. We have a 20-minute break here. I'd like you to can you just talk to me? And it might be that you just save that person from committing suicide over this dark weekend, holiday weekend coming up, 3 days off, no family, no friends. I've been there. I know what that's like. A lot of times, all that person needs is someone to talk to. You may just have saved that person's life and even maybe turned that person's life around just by being an ear, just by listening. You might not even need to say anything. The person's not listening, not looking for advice. The person is needing to get a bunch of stuff out, and maybe in the process of doing that, he or she figures out what the next step should be. That's charity. That's Christian giving. That's caring about an actual individual human being. We shouldn't be taking these classes of people and lumping them all together, a certain race that this gets back to the justice thing. They're suffering from injustice. Here's another group lives in a certain country. They're suffering from some existential crisis. Here's another group, because of their gender, they always get a raw deal. I'm going to write a check for this one, write a check for that. You notice when you're doing all that, you're taking people and just classifying them as non-individuals. You're stamping a label across their heads. You're not noticing who they are as people. Does that sound very Christian to you? And again, I'm not suggesting that the care packages, the boxes full of clothes and food are not good things, but they're not the end. We should be trying to go beyond that. And I don't need a church to do that either. I can find my own charity, but I think the church should be the place that inspires me to know my neighbor and reach out to my neighbor and help my neighbor, pull my neighbor a little farther up the mountain, because we're all trying to find God. And a can of beans just doesn't get you very far along that road.